J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
And welcome in. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And I am one of the game show guys. My name is Tom Bastek.
I am the other of the game show guys, and my name is Mike Jacobs. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 20, the big show, the really big show.
It is going to be a really big show today. Michael, we made it. Our first season ends today.
It does. I think more than I expected out of the first season of this show. I'm very proud of us, Tom. I'm gonna go ahead and toot our own horn for a moment. I think we've been doing a very good job, and I think the feedback that we have been getting reflects that. I don't know who voted us a 1 on iTunes, but they can do whatever they want. I'm not gonna let it get to me, is what I'm saying. But yeah, I just thanks to you and for doing such a great job, and thanks to everybody who's been listening and writing in and all that. It's been a great 20 episodes, and I'm very much looking forward to the next 20 in season 2.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you to you because you are the first person that really has put the time and the effort into this that I know. I've been wanting to do a podcast forever and a day, and I always talk to people and they're like, yeah, I want to do a podcast. And I'm like, okay, here's what we need to do. And that's the end of it. And you're the only person that said, well, okay, Tom, if we're going to do a podcast, this is what we need to do. I'm going to do it. And you did it.
Well, and that's the thing is I'm not the guy who's going to be like, here's what we need to do. But if you tell me what we need to do, I'm happy to do it. So I'm glad. I think we found a good, interlocking puzzle piece situation here.
Well, yeah. And plus, I mean, we both have the love of game shows. I think that helps. I'm glad to see that other people are sharing that love with us. That's great.
Indeed. It's interesting because we just kind of chose this because it's a thing that we enjoy. I never really knew much about the game show community before starting this, and I love that it exists, and I love that it's out there, and that all these people are listening to us. And I think Christian brought it up too, that when we started this, we weren't known in the game show community, and I loved that. I didn't even know it was there really. So to sort of be accepted so quickly is just it's a great honor. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, and even like just this week, Canadian game show guru Ryan Vickers dropped us a quick note, and it was just nice for what he said. He binged our entire show, loves what we're doing, is really, really excited, and I can't wait because when we do a show on Canadian game shows, we're calling him up.
Yeah, I mean, he's been, it's like 12, right?
12, yeah.
Wow, 12 game shows. That's amazing.
Yeah, and in 4 different countries, too.
Yeah, and different languages. I mean, obviously, Canadian, being multilingual is not uncommon. So yeah, no, that was a great honor coming from such a big figure in the scene.
So thank you everybody for listening in and making this first season great. We promise that we've got some stuff we're going to get to that we've been talking about for a while in our time off, and then we'll be right back at it with season number 2.
And what's great is we're not flying by the seat of our pants anymore. We were planning out season 2, which, by the way, Tom, I have some more ideas that I want to talk to you about off air. But yeah, it's only going to get better from here.
I'm so excited. More ideas. Yay. All right. Speaking of great ideas, I think it's a good idea if we talk to Christian.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get into the news.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, and put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your very own front yard, it's time for the news.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mike. This is the news brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. A former talk show host is heading up a revival of a classic TV game show. for the 2021 season. Jay Leno, former host of The Tonight Show, has signed on to host a revival of the classic Groucho Marx quiz show, You Bet Your Life. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with the show, that is the game where the game is secondary to Groucho's interactions with the contestants. He was really great at creating these spontaneous moments of humor and just being very glib and very witty with the contestants. So a lot of people watched the show mainly to find out what Groucho was going to say next. Now, we're getting a new version of it. This would be the third revival since the original. We've had one in the early 80s with Buddy Hackett. We had one in the early 90s with Bill Cosby. And Jay Leno's going to be number 4. They signed on for 180 episodes, which is a huge order. So they're clearly doubling down on his hopeful appeal to the to TV audiences. It's going to be on Fox owned and operated stations and syndication, and they're bringing back the classic format. Of course, it can be expected that they're going to update it with some modern influences, but I'm really interested to see how this one plays out. I'm not the biggest Jay Leno fan in the world, but it's an interesting casting choice to say the least, and I'm really, again, excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, Mike and I talked about this when we did You Bet Your Life, that we really thought Steve Harvey would be great, right, Mike?
Yeah, he's got that sort of same interaction with the audience, camera breaking the fourth wall, as it were. And I don't know, the idea, I'm still processing the idea of Jay Leno. I don't think I like it. I'm not a big fan of him either. But I suppose with him, hosting late night talk shows, he's probably decent at interacting and improvising and stuff. I don't know. I don't think I've had enough exposure with him to say for sure, but I don't think I really like the sound of him being the new host.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to note that for the majority of the time he was on The Tonight Show as host, one of the main criticisms of Jay Leno was that he wasn't very good at commanding interviews. He was good at asking questions, but not so good at hearing the answers and sort of listening actively, which is a really tough skill to learn if you don't know it. So it'd be interesting to see if they could take an interviewer like Jay Leno and make him good enough to be the crux of an arguably interview-based game show. I hope that works out for them.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you about the idea of like active listening. That's something that Tom and I as improv actors, we know that's like the key to improv. You can't sit there and joke around with other people without hearing what they're saying and reacting honestly to it. So I think if that's one of his faults, then that really does not bode well. But again, if they did 180 episodes, I trust that they know what they're doing. That may be a silly thing when it comes to TV executives, but who knows?
Christian, it's just like when we do improv, active listening is one of the most important skills that you have to make sure that, if you're not paying attention to like what other people in the conversation are saying. So it's, definitely.
Anyway, this week in game show history.
Yeah, well, so the thing is, I don't know if that's true so much as the fact that you really have to actively listen to what other people are saying so that you can react to what they're talking about. If you're not paying attention to what they're saying, then the bit's just not going to work.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy, yeah.
How about this week in game show history?
Well, this week in game show history, we are going back to 1981 and the premiere of a super obscure show, super underrated. It's called Pitfall. Now, Pitfall was a quiz show hosted by Alex Trebek. This was one of his first hosting jobs of the 80s. He, of course, came off of High Rollers and a couple of other shows before this, but Alex Trebek was hosting this in Canada, and this was a show where there was a very basic sort of front game. You had two players competing to answer questions that were voted on by the studio audience. So they'd get a sort of opinion-based question. All the people in the audience would press their button, and you have to guess what the audience said. You have to, it's like a game of prediction.
Sure.
But the main centerpiece of Pitfall was the set for the bonus game. Now, the set consisted of 8 elevator shafts, 8 two-story elevator shafts connected by a bridge. And the goal was to, in 100 seconds, cross the bridge from section 1 to section 8. Now, they help you beforehand. They light up the bridge, and they used to call it the light show. So it was almost a game of memory. The 3 sections that contained pitfalls, which you wanted to avoid, would light up twice, and the safe sections would light up once. So you'd have a few seconds to watch that. You'd ascend the elevator to the top of the bridge, and you'd cross one by answering questions for each section of the bridge. If you get to a pitfall and you don't have a pit pass that you earned in the beginning part of the game, you sink down to the bottom of the set, and you don't come back up until you answer a question correctly. It is unbelievably 80s, unbelievably funky music. It's like it's just such a well put together show. And the bonus round is, I would say, the most exciting game shows I have ever seen. So Pitfall, just so cool.
To me, I agree with the coolness, and to me, one of the greatest things about this show is the aesthetics of it. Like, it's still got that sort of 70s, brown and yellow and orange and that sort of feel to it, but you start to see some of the like 80s design influence creep in here and there, and it just creates this great little blend of the two. Like, the fact that it's 81, it very much sits solidly in 81 design aesthetics.
Right.
And then the like Mr. Pibb font for the logo. It all looks so cool.
It's beautiful. You get that late 70s, like you said, that late 70s, early 80s sort of design aesthetic. I've never seen the movie, but a lot of people have compared it to Logan's Run, whereas that's sort of like half retro futuristic, half sort of disco fashion. It's sort of reminiscent of that, and I think they may have taken some influence from that project and things similar. But yeah, it's just a beautiful show.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And also, not necessarily aesthetically, but just because of the format and whatnot, it reminded me a little bit of the old Nintendo game Elevator Action.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh, that's a great one.
What was the game we were playing the other day, Mike? Anticipation.
Oh yeah, Anticipation is a great game.
Great Nintendo game back in the day. Hey, I will say this. I hope they bring it back. I don't know when they do, if they do, but I would assume that they try to do what a lot of the modern day game shows are bringing back. Like, I don't know if you guys even noticed this, but on the current match game, Alec Baldwin is walking around in his socks, number one. And number two, it's got the shag carpet on the stage. So it's a nice little calling back to that. And maybe we get some of that 80s, 90s retro or 70s, 80s retro design if we get a Pitfall reboot.
That would be cool. Great. I would be very surprised, to be honest with you, if there was a reboot, because I should mention that there's a very unfortunate postscript to the story of Pitfall.
Why is there always an unfortunate postscript, Christian?
I'm sorry. Well, you know me. I'm the bringer of the unfortunate postscripts.
We're going to remember that for your title. Okay,
there you go. Right. Yeah, put it on my business card. Yeah. So Catalina Productions was the Canadian production company that spearheaded Pitfall. Now, into its second season, it had 2 seasons total. About halfway through, the company went bankrupt, ran out of money. So as a result, none of the contestants from about the midpoint of season 2 on got their winnings. None of the crew got paid. Alex Trebek, the host, didn't get paid. And to this day, he references Pitfall in interviews as the one gig in his game show career where he got completely screwed. And it being doubly painful because it was a fellow Canadian that screwed him over. And he did one interview where he actually showed the bounced check from Catalina printed and framed on his wall. So unfortunate that the show ran out of money, but it was just so beautiful and just sort of marred by that.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Don't piss off Alex Trebek. He'll never forget it.
Well, I mean, not like I had plans to, but I'll certainly keep that in mind.
I'm just saying, he's hanging the check 50 years later behind his desk.
Yeah, right? That sounds like he's a grudge holder.
Scary. All right. Well, you know what? We made it to 20, Christian, and I just wanted to say thanks, man. We really appreciate it. You know, what did we bring in? Episode number 2, I think?
I think it was. You know, what's funny? I was thinking about when I first got involved with the podcast, with your guys' show, and I remember that we did it pre-recorded. Like, I would pre-record the news and you guys would talk about it, and thinking back on it and thinking about all the fun and interactions and spontaneity we've had doing this together live, I cannot imagine how we ever thought doing the news pre-recorded would work.
I totally agree. It felt like the right idea at the time, but then as soon as we heard it and we went to doing it live, it's been so much better. I can't imagine doing it any other way.
Well, guys, for those listening in, the one thing that I definitely want to mention is that, because it's going to happen before the beginning of next season, is the three of us are going to be live together on the same trivia team for Quarantine the Game Show. Happening September 15th live on Facebook Live. We will put all of the links up on our Facebook page as well as the website. But Christian, Mike, and I probably being funny and stupid and silly and winning some trivia all at the same time. Please join us if you get the chance.
We better win. We paid him enough.
Yeah, right. No, the only reason I feel like we should win is we're the game show guys. Like, we do the podcast about game shows, and like, if we lose, that's really terrible.
We are sort of front loading it with a lot of expectation that we'll do well. So,
well, all right, Christian, we've had you on for 20 episodes, or I guess 19. We're really glad that you've been here. We appreciate you. We're very, very happy that we've gotten a true historian and a wonderful game show guy. And thank you again for not only bringing all of your intelligence and knowledge to the show, but also not patronizing the crap out of Mike and I for not knowing everything there is to know about game shows.
Oh my God, of course. And, I feel like this could extend to any other fandom, not just game show fandom. But to me, a huge part of the fun is informing you guys about things you might not know about, thinking of things that are really, really cool. That, I go through my week and I'm always thinking about game shows. And when I read or find something really cool, that's my first thought. Is like, I have to bring that to the guys on Thursday. They're going to love that. Like, to me, that is a huge part of the fun, is just sharing my knowledge with you guys. And I love it. To me, like, that's part of it. That's a huge part of it.
absolutely. And we love having you on here to give us an air of legitimacy and all that
Yes.
fun stuff. And I was talking about this the other day, that it kind of blows my mind that somehow after our first episode, we managed to catch the attention of the news writer for like probably the biggest game show website on the internet. And I'm just so glad that you decided to reach out and then we decided to work together, and it's been just fantastic.
Well, listen, I'm glad for you guys having me as well, because, I love broadcasting and I love talking about game shows and I love sharing what I know with as many people as I can. So in that way, you guys have really brightened this year for me. And this has been just such a cool experience.
Well, we got two things for you coming up. Obviously, this next season, we're going to...
Oh, you're going to fire me, aren't you?
Yeah, that's it. You're gone. Sorry.
Thanks for all your hard work now.
Well,
Get
we got
out.
two things for you. One, you're fired.
Two, any remuneration we promised you at all, it's gone. All right, so here's the scoop. Next year, we're going to start, for next season, not next year. Next season, we're going to start our Patreon. And one of the things we definitely are interested in doing is offering up, if people are making a big enough donation, that they can come on and listen in as we record the news on Thursday. Are you down with that?
I mean, I'm fine with it. I hope they keep the receipt, but...
Well, we're not going to be, they won't be allowed to comment, and they won't be allowed to, they'll be allowed to comment afterwards. They will not allowed to be able to record it. That's for sure.
Oh, geez, thank God. Well, I think for extra money, you should let them be able to comment during the show.
Oh my gosh, that'd be hilarious.
I mean, look, if they're willing to give enough money, I'll let them host the damn show.
Hell yeah, you're
Sure.
the patron. Yep.
There you go. The second thing is that Mike and I came up with a great bit. We're gonna field questions from our listeners, whether it be through Facebook, through the website, Instagram, wherever, that we're gonna throw at you to kind of well, as we're calling it, stump the chump.
Wait, who's the chump? Is it me? I'm a chump?
Well, only if you get stumped, then you're a chump.
All the things you guys said about me, and I'm a chump. I can't believe it.
You're the best chump we know, buddy. Are you up for answering some trivia questions from the audience next season?
Well, I've had a second to think, and my conclusion is this. Bring it, listeners.
Oh, the gauntlet has been dropped.
You are nothing. I welcome it.
Wow. Okay, Mike, you heard it here first, right?
Well, yeah. I don't know where I would have heard it first.
It would be weird if you heard it somewhere else.
No, actually, I was listening to Conan O'Brien's podcast, and he mentioned something about it. So
That damn Conan, he always is getting ahead of us on everything, man. It's ridiculous. Anyway, guys, so get your questions ready. Starting next season with episode 1 of season 2, we'll have Stump the Chump. And Christian, we've been working on a cute little jingle for you, too.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I hope there's a marimba solo in it.
I don't know if there's a marimba solo. Well, maybe.
If that Patreon kicks off, maybe we can buy a marimba.
That's a reach goal, but yeah, we're definitely going for that. All right, how about a quick little plug, the last plug of the season for Buzzer Blog?
Of course. Well, for the last 20 episodes, BuzzerBlog.com has been proud, honored to support and enter into a creative partnership with Tell Them What They've Won. We are the #1 game show website in the world. Whether you're looking for news about current series, returning series, reviews of shows from your past, and we're just the #1 place to go. Whether you're an industry insider, a casual fan, or a true game show junkie, if you're listening to this podcast, you are our target audience, and you are going to love the website, buzzerblog.com. Check it out. You will not regret it. And thank you guys for all the help and support that you've given us for the past few months. We are incredibly appreciative of it. And I know that I speak for myself and everyone on the Buzzerblog team. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I don't know, like I said earlier, I don't know that this podcast would be what it was without you.
Listen, I thank you guys for having me on. Again, I just reached out one day and you guys were on board, and to me that's still amazing. But
Kismet.
I'm proud of all the work we've done.
It's getting all sappy in here. Can we move on?
We're moving on. All right, thank you, Christian. We will hear a lot more from him coming up. Mike, the one thing we haven't talked about is what games are we featuring on the really big show?
Wow, there's so many. I cannot remember because we just chose a bunch of shows that have big, and I always mix up which one's which. So I'm just going to read out the list. We have the Big Fan, the Big Game, the Big Payoff, the Big Moment, the Big Showdown, and the Big Surprise, which is not very surprising at all.
Well, there's not a lot on a lot of these. A lot of these shows, the reason why we grouped 6 of them together is because they didn't all last very long.
Sure. Well, and I think that's, we're doing 6 in a row here. So, we don't have a whole lot of time really. So we got to cram as much in as we can. So it works that we did shows that didn't exist for very long.
All right. Well, when we come back, this is so different for me because I'm going to actually do gameplay and history, which I never really do. You do that. That's your job.
I'm so excited to flip the switch here.
Well, it's coming up next. We're going to do our first 3 game shows are coming up in our second segment. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. And welcome back. Hey, it's so funny. I couldn't pick music because there were so many songs. So I just went with the basic generic intro. But there's so many shows that we're doing, I wasn't going to be able to play a clip of every single song.
Well, that's fair. And I think I know at least one of mine, I don't even know that there is a song, honestly.
Yeah, I only caught one episode of Big Payoff, and it didn't really have a song to begin with, so that was interesting. But let's start right now with our first show. It's called Big Fan, and this was a more recent game show. It was actually something that was produced by Jimmy Kimmel, and it came out of his show. It was a segment that he had a bit called Who Knows? So they'd bring Metallica on, and they'd get Metallica's biggest fan, and they would play against Metallica on the show. Now, that wasn't on Big Fan. That was on Kimmel.
Right.
It only ran for 4 episodes. There was 2 on January 9th and 2 on January 17th of 2017, and that's it. So ABC greenlit it and then killed it.
Which is interesting that it's like they must have killed it, I think, before it aired because they aired 2 on the same day. That is a very, I don't know if it's a common tactic, but it happened to Arrested Development where they started airing multiple episodes on the same day just to speed it up and get it off the air.
Oh, God, that's terrible.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's see what Christian has to say about Big Fan.
Big Fan was one of those shows that I wish I had gotten to see more of. It didn't last very long, but I don't think it was because it was a bad show. I think the idea of an everyday person meeting their favorite celebrity has a lot of merit to it. It almost reminded me of a show called Fanatic on MTV back in the 90s, where they would have so-and-so singer, musician, their number one fan would meet that celebrity and be able to interview them. So you capture that excitement of talking to this person that you've idolized for so long. So I think that idea itself is TV gold. You can't go wrong with the excitement of meeting a famous person that you've loved for the first time. I thought Andy Richter was a fantastic host. A lot of people don't know that at a certain point in the 2000s, he was up for the hosting job on the $25,000 pyramid, and I think he even shot a pilot. I think you could find a clip of that on YouTube, but he's a great host, definitely deserves a lot more work than he's gotten, other than the sidekick on Conan, on which he's brilliant. But yeah, Big Fan, excellent show. Wish it had stuck around a bit longer, but we still have those 4 weeks that it was on.
So there it is. Andy Richter was the host, which is kind of cool for him. And as you heard Christian say, consider a very good game show host. I mean, was considered for other projects.
Yeah, I've always liked Andy Richter, and I don't think he gets the
credit
he deserves. I will say the TV show he was on, I can't say if it was bad or good. I never really watched it, but I think that, I don't know. From what I understand, it was kind of forgettable and not the best thing in the world. But I love him. And again, back to Arrested Development, he was on that for a little while. He was great. I don't know. I think he hasn't found the right vehicle.
It's okay. This thing, it only had the 4 episodes were Matt McConaughey, Aaron Rodgers, Kim Kardashian, and Kristen Bell. I unfortunately, none of those episodes are available on YouTube to watch. I tried to pull at least one down to watch it, but I'll give you essentially what the gameplay is for it. Basically, you've got 3 super fans, and then you bring in the celebrity that they're super fans of. And the celebrity sits there, and they ask those 3 people questions in round 1, and then they eliminate one of them, and it gets down to 2. And then they ask them questions, and it gets down to 1. And then in the final round, that person plays against the celebrity with questions about the celebrity.
Right. And I love that. And it's great because I think Christian kind of touched on this, that just the idea of meeting a celebrity and then like showing what a big fan you are, like that's why you want to meet a celebrity, right? So you can show to them that you're their biggest fan or whatever. I think it's such a cool format for that. And the flip side of that is I think you'd be surprised at how often celebrities don't know stuff about themselves.
So I did watch a little clip that came out of Kimmel, and the when they were promoting the show originally, Andy Richter and him were chatting about it, and they show the clip, and the question it was the final round, it was between Kim and whoever the super fan was, and they were like, how many carats did Kanye West put in get in the ring that Kanye West gave Kim when they got engaged? Boom. She buzzes in and says 12, and she's wrong. It was 15. So the celebrity didn't even know her own, it's her own ring.
Right.
But I mean, that also tells you a little bit about Kim Kardashian.
Well,
but
I think that's probably a solid point. And I mean, not for nothing, but there is the thing that I'm going to talk about this a little bit when we get to one of my shows, but the speed trivia thing is sometimes you just buzz in and say whatever pops into your head, even if you know it's wrong.
Right.
It just, you're firing on all cylinders, so you just go as fast as possible. There's the specific example that pops into my head is, I don't know if you're familiar with the actor Michael Rooker. He played Yondu in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Right.
He's been in a bunch of other stuff. He's on a podcast that I listen to fairly frequently that's trivia based, and every time, it's like a joke now, but every time he goes on, they make one of the rounds about his own movies, and he often doesn't even know that it's his own movie. Like, he doesn't figure out until it's everybody's laughing and the host explains to him what's going on. He's like, oh yeah, I was in that. For some reason, it's not for some reason. My point here being is that fans often rewatch over and over again and get to know the nuances of a thing that the person who's in it was probably just in it, maybe watched it once when it came out, but doesn't know everything about it, being a member of the cast does not immediately make one a super fan.
No, and you know, the truth is a lot of those people, and he's one of them, it's just a job, man. It's work. You were in 10 movies last year because you know what? You took every chance you could get to get work.
Right.
So you're not going to remember them all until someone says, oh, yeah, well, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so were in it. And you're like, yeah, I remember that now. You know, that sort of thing.
Right. Like, I bet I would beat Tom Hanks in a Forrest Gump trivia contest.
Yeah, you probably would. I mean, you got to remember, he was literally managing lines and managing acting, and that's his job there,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And there's a lot of celebrities that don't even want to see the finished project. You know, when they're done with that project, they don't even want to see what it was that they were in. They're like, that's fine. It made a lot of money. Great. I don't need to see the finished product. It's fine.
Not that I'm a celebrity, but I am absolutely that way. I hate watching stuff that I'm in, even if it was successful and I was proud of it and it was good. Nope, not watching it.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of a weird thing for me. Sometimes I want to see it, and sometimes I just don't want to see it. So I will tell you, there's a certain creep factor here too. Apparently, and I did not see this clip, but I did see people talking about it. Matthew McConaughey, like they asked him what the name of his elementary school was. And the person buzzed in before him and knew it. And he's just like, I was the one who went to that elementary school. How do you even know that? Like, there's that creep factor there that I'm kind of like, is it big fan or is it big stalker?
Right? That's kind of over the line a little bit. That's, to me, the idea of asking personal questions about the celebrity, that may be a little bit on the creepy side.
Yeah,
to me, it should be more about what the celebrity has done than who they are as a person.
Well, it also makes me wonder, they got these 4 people to do it. Not to say that there wouldn't be other people that would do it, but maybe they had a hard time, like, just getting people to sign on board for this.
Yeah, so to me, I'm not wild about any of these celebrities. I don't even know who Aaron Rodgers is, which means he's probably a sports guy. I wouldn't want to be on any of these shows, let alone if we're asking trivia questions about them as people. But the flip side of that being, like, is if you had, example that pops in my head, let's have Joel from Mystery Science Theater. He's like the creator and original writer, right?
Right. I know.
I would love to have a trivia contest about Mystery Science Theater with him, because I feel like, you know, he would know about the show. I don't care. I mean, I don't care about him as a person. That sounds terrible. But trivia wise, like, you know, I'm interested in knowing about him. I like to hear interviews and things like that. He was great on Mark Maron's podcast. But that's not why I'm a fan of him. I'm a fan of his work, not where he lives and what school he went to. That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, I have a lot of people that I'm going to say I'm a fan of. I don't get really starstruck, and that's a big thing for me, because I realize that these people are really just people just like us. They're just working at a very high level. You know, they're getting acting gigs that are worth a lot more money. It's kind of like when you meet somebody who's a dentist to the stars. It's the same thing as meeting the dentist to your neighbor. You know, they're just one's getting paid a lot more.
That's true.
So to me, I don't get super starstruck. I also don't feel like I'm a fan of a person at all. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, yes, exactly. And even with my example, I said Joel just because he's one of the creators, but you could also choose Mike or Trace or any of the cast members, and I would be equally as excited about it. And yeah, again, it's the work, not the person.
All right, so that is the big fan. And it left us as soon as it came, and it's too bad. I do think that there's something there, and maybe it just forever will be a bit on Kimmel. I think it's a great bit.
It's a bit. It's not a full show.
All right, so the next one on our list is The Big Game.
Big Game.
The Big Game. Yeah. I mean, we get some really generic names, but it makes a lot of sense. It ran for 4 months on NBC from June through September of 1958. It is a really cool show, and let's hear what Christian has to say about it.
You know, the more I think of it, the more I realize that Battleship was the perfect idea for a game show. The big game came out at a time when parlor games on television were having a bit of a moment. You had Dotto, which was essentially connect the dots for money with trivia questions attached to it. That was the number one show on TV heading into 1958, and it was just an unbelievable, it was a powerhouse. So to capitalize on the trend of pen and paper games making the jump to television was probably the smart thing to do at that time, and Big Game does it beautifully. We get Tom Kennedy in one of his first, if not his first, national job as a game show host. He was just as perfect here as he would be in the dozens of shows that he would host throughout the next 30 or 40 years. Tom Kennedy is just one of the greatest hosts ever, and it was fascinating to be able to see the genesis of those skills, but Big Game is just a really fun game. You know, it was done with that sort of 1950s charm. It was a very accessible show. It was fun to watch. The theme of the show, the motif rather, of jungle animals and going out for a hunt, calling it the Big Game. I mean, it was just a very well put together show. And I'm surprised that of all the board games that have made the transition from board game to TV game, we haven't seen an updated version of Battleship. I think it still would make a fantastic game show. So somebody get on that. Come on, what are you doing?
So they took Battleship and they made it into a game show.
Into a hunting game show.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, I will say this would never fly today. PETA would be all up in the business of this, even though there is no actual hippos, tigers, or alligators being hunted. But they would not love this at all.
That is absolutely true.
The gameplay for this is pretty basic. 2 contestants and or what would you call them, hunters, compete they're giving a 5x5 square, which is your jungle grid, where they place their ships, or in this case, their animals, a hippo, a tiger, and an alligator on the board. And of course, the opponent can't see it. You answer questions. For every question you get right, it gives you between 3 and 6 shots that can be taken in the opponent's jungle grid. Obviously, as you sink the battleships, or in this case, you kill the animals and get them off the board, you get dollar amounts for it. It's like 100 for the first, the second's like 400, and the third's 1,500, and the win for the game as well.
The questions being general knowledge, and apparently most dealing with song titles or spelling, to quote Wikipedia.
Right.
What a missed opportunity there. Why not? You have this strong theme. Why not make the questions on theme too? Questions about animals and the sport and that sort of thing. And
yeah, this is like, you've got this very strong theme. You would think you would just go with that.
Yeah, it just feels out of place.
Well, I mean, needless to say, it didn't last all that long. Obviously it was a half-hour show. It was originally produced in prime time, and it wasn't bad. Tom Kennedy, as you heard Christian say, great host. Really, really wonderful. And, the funny thing is, when we're doing these, Mike, and I could say this, we're 20 episodes in now, you can say, like, holy cow, I don't remember this guy. And then you see his face and it lights you up immediately. You're like, oh, that guy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've had that feeling for several names that we've run across during the course of this show.
And it's funny, some of them, the name, but you don't know the face, and vice versa. As we've been growing over the last 20 episodes, I've definitely said, oh, I definitely know a lot of these people.
Well, and that's definitely true for Johnny Jacobs. We talked about him, that I don't know that he's no relation, but I don't think he's of any relation.
Well, that's pretty much it for the big game. Not a whole lot there. Again, it ran only for 4 months or so in 1958. Which brings us to our third game. It's called The Big Payoff.
Yes.
This one ran for a while. It was on daytime from 51 to 59. There was a 1962 re-syndication, quick little version of it that came out. Didn't do a lot. But let's hear what Christian has to say about this one.
The Big Payoff is a show that I'm familiar with by name, but I can't tell you that I've seen a lot of it. I know that it was on for a very long time, and we get Bess Meyerson, who was famously the first Jewish American Miss America, having a prominent role in the show. And I think that she made a lot of inroads for women in game shows. Before this, I think Arlene Francis had hosted a show, but you had Roxanne on Beat the Clock, but even she was pretty anonymous. She'd never had a huge speaking role. So to have a female in a role that elevated her to that of more than just a prize girl, I think was breakthrough for that particular time, especially in the early to mid 50s. The Big Payoff is one of those sort of tug on your heartstrings kind of shows where you get somebody nominating another person to be a contestant because they're just such a wonderful person. And I think it started as men inviting their wives to be on the show. And I think later it became more of a couples game as opposed to the pure idea of nominating a player and doing that whole thing, which would be following in the footsteps of a lot of shows that were popular around that time. You had Queen for a Day, you had Strike It Rich with Warren Hall, who the rumor was that Strike It Rich brought in so many charity cases the state of New York was going to force it to register as an official department. But yeah, The Big Payoff was influential for what it was. It's a show that I wish I was more familiar with. But as in a lot of game shows from the 1950s, you can definitely pick elements from each of them that would make their way into game shows for the next couple of decades. And The Big Payoff clearly is no exception.
Well, you hear Christian say that, he's only seen a clip of this. I've only seen a clip of this, too, and I can only find a clip from the 1962 version, which, by the way, interestingly enough, was filmed at Tavern on the Green in Central Park in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, cars going by in the background, like you can hear the birds chirping, like outside, like amazing.
That is pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's just, because with everything shot on a soundstage nowadays, like, boy, I mean, I'd love to see some more stuff done in public. Now, obviously, you can't do it live like that because, you got people in the back that are like flipping the bird and stuff. But I mean,
sure,
it would just be cool to see more of that. I obviously, when the Today Show and all the other morning shows like went down on the street, with the glass that's literally sitting on Times Square or whatever, that's a whole thing that, I mean, I like and I don't like. I'm not sure, but I think in a game show it'd be interesting and different.
It would be a refreshing difference, I think. Whether or not it ends up working in the long run, I think it would at least be interesting to see.
So you're going to hate this game, Mike, because there's really no gameplay.
Oh, good. Let's go.
There are 4 questions. That's it.
That's it, huh?
Now, let me tell you, though, they have a really great way of choosing contestants back in the day. So basically, contestants were picked from men who had written letters in as to why their wife deserved all these fabulous prizes. And that's how they would choose.
Wow.
They'd only be asked 4 questions. There was two couples, obviously, because the wife was there with the man, and the 2 men would answer the questions. There was 4 of them. If they got 3 of them right, then they got the big payoff question, which was the last one. It was for a car for him, a mink for her, and a trip to Europe for both of them.
Wow. So is it that the 4 questions are like Millionaire style taking a really long time, or are they just flying through contestants on this show?
Yeah, I only saw a little clip of it. It just seems to take forever to get through 4 questions.
It sounds like a Thrillsville. I can see why it lasted for 8 years.
Yeah, and the episode that I pulled down in 62 that was on YouTube, and I'll probably put it up on the website as well for this week's episode, but there's like a creep factor again. Like the host is like, as everybody comes out in minks, and the hostess comes out in a mink, and he says, "Oh, the squirrels are jealous of your mink," and he says something about like, "Oh yeah, well I have a crush on your mink too," and then like gives her like an uncomfortable hug, and says, "And we'll be back after this." And I was like, okay, Creepville,
real product of the time kind of thing, huh?
Woo, God, yeah, man. One cool thing they used to do though is on Tuesdays they would do the Little Big Payoff, where kids would write in and they would come on the show and they would have 4 questions, and of course the adults who came with them would have the big last question, which would win all of the big prizes. So that was pretty cool.
I like that one. That's kind of a cool idea. And I also like that on that version, they gave a prize for each correct answer. So it wasn't just like everything rides on getting them all right. Since it's a kid, you can give them a little bit of leeway.
And of course, Christian mentioned Bess Meyerson, who was the very first Jewish Miss America, was a hostess on the show as well.
Well, good for her.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we've got 3 more shows. I'm throwing it over to you, Mike. We're going to do the big moment, the big showdown, and the big surprise. Is there any surprises there?
I don't know why they name it that show. We're gonna get more. We're gonna get more into that one. I'm saving that one for last.
Okay.
There's a lot to talk about there.
Excellent. I can't wait. All right. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they want. Welcome back to segment 3 of the really big show.
Such a big show. That first segment was much bigger than our normal first segment.
I didn't notice. Was it really?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I'm just joking around because it's a big show.
Well, I have to tell you, this is like the first time though that I'm not concerned about how big the show is, because we've forewarned people it's going to be a big show.
It is absolutely going to be a big show. It's funny, we started at we were like, we're going to keep it to a hard 30 minutes. That's it. And then it got to like 40 or 45. We're like, all right, as long as it's like under 50, like we don't want the first digit to be 5. All right, so long as it's under an hour, we're good. All right, so long as we tell them ahead of time that it's going to be over an hour, we're good.
Be an hour, we're fine. Well, here's the thing. Time will tell. If we go 2 hours somewhere and like all of our listens drop off, we'll know we've pushed the limit,
Well, that's true. That's true.
All right, Mike, you've got 3 more shows for us. Let's do it.
I got 3 more shows. I'm going to start with The Big Moment. Not a lot here. It ran for, I think, 3 months, April 3rd to June 26th in 1999. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about 12 episodes total at the most that there could possibly be. It was based on a Japanese game show called Happy Family Plan. I couldn't actually find anything on this show online, but I did find a lot of Happy Family Plan. Let's toss it over to Christian to hear what he's got to say about it.
The Big Moment was one of those shows that my family would watch together. It was very family-friendly TV, produced, of course, by Vin DiBona, who was famous for America's Funniest Home Videos. Home Videos was based on a Japanese TV show where viewers would send in their tapes from their camcorders, which were a big phenomenon in the late 80s. The Big Moment was based on a show called Happy Family Plan, also from Japan. And so The Big Moment was an American adaptation of that. And it was a really entertaining show. A family would get a week to perfect a skill before they would have to go on stage and perform the skill successfully for a huge cash prize. We had Brad Sherwood as host, who a lot of people know as an improviser panelist on Whose Line Is It Anyway? And he did a great job on this show. Again, one of those shows that I wish lasted a lot longer. I think it was very, very entertaining, maybe even before its time. I think now in the year 2020, where we have families of quote-unquote influencers, there would be no shortage of families that could be cast for a show like this today. And I'm really sort of bummed that it didn't make it bigger than it did. The Big Moment never really had its moment, and that's unfortunate because it was a really, really, really entertaining show.
So yeah, apparently really hit home for him. I was not familiar with it. Like I said, I couldn't find a whole lot on it. I watched a preview and then a couple episodes of the Happy Family Plan. But basically the idea is the family gets a week to do a task, and then they come on the show and they have to do it. And most of the show is sort of reality documentary human interest story about the family and who they are and what they're doing and whatnot.
What kind of tasks are we talking about here, Mike? That's my question.
Well, and that's really the only thing that I have to talk about that Christian didn't really mention. There's a bunch of different stuff. So one of them is they have to play Beethoven's Für Elise on piano without missing a note. You have to teach a puppy 5 new tricks. You have to identify 12 flavors of ice cream while blindfolded. There's 2 actually that I really liked. One is answering 10 questions on the film Ghost. Not that I'm particularly a fan of the movie Ghost, it's fine, but if you give me a week and you say I'm going to ask you 10 questions of any difficulty regarding this movie, I can almost guarantee you I would get all 10 questions correct.
Wow.
I would watch it and memorize everything there was. As long as it's things that happen in the movie, not like, what's the name of the best boy's third cousin's wife, you know? And then the other one was memorizing pi to the 100th decimal. I can already do that to at least 32. I could probably go to 37 once I get there. And that's like, I haven't really, I mean, I've tried, obviously, quote unquote, but it's not like I've spent time trying to do that. So I think within a week I get to 100 edges of pi without a problem.
I mean, I would just create a sing song and go that way with it.
That's true. Another common memory tactic that I've heard of that works pretty well for me is what they refer to as spatial memory. So like break pi down into easily digestible numbers, and then imagine walking through your house and you're placing those numbers in different locations in your house, right? So like everybody knows 3.14 is pi, right? So put that on the table inside your door. And then 159265, that's another little chunk of numbers. Put that on the counter in your kitchen. And then when you're recalling it, just walk through your house and remember where you put everything. And it sounds like it's just like, oh yeah, just remember it. And obviously it takes time to develop and whatnot, but but memorization techniques do work. I can memorize crazy, weird things without much difficulty.
So that's the big moment.
Yeah, the big moment, like I said, not much there. It's just, here's a really difficult thing. You got a week to figure it out, which is kind of a cool concept, but I don't see how it would last for very long, especially since it's just like, here's a documentary about a family, and then like it's got to be like 5 minutes for the actual task, right? Like it does not take long to say 100 digits of pi.
Right. No, I get it. And it probably doesn't take long to play the Beethoven on piano or whatever, but
right.
But obviously it's the human interest that's really there. It's like the makeover shows and whatnot. I mean, it's like,
that's what it
oh,
is,
let's
kinda
get them all teared up and
right. Which I mean, that's fine. It's just not my thing. We've talked about this many times. I like good gameplay, and this one doesn't do it for me. So speaking of gameplay, though, let's move on to the big showdown. This was easily my favorite of the 6 that we've done. Ran from December 3rd, 1974 to July 4th, 1975. Not a very long run for what I feel is the quality of the game here, but let's see what Christian has to say about it.
Now, talk about one of my favorite quiz shows ever. The Big Showdown aired in the mid-1970s, and at that time, there were a couple dozen first-run game shows airing in syndication on the major networks, and if you were to sit 100 people down today and tell them to name a game show from the 1970s, The Big Showdown, chances are, would not come up at all. It is totally under the radar, very obscure show, didn't last a huge amount of time, maybe just about 100 episodes, maybe a few more, but The Big Showdown is a relic of an era where the star of the show was not the host, was not the set, but the game. The game was so strong. The Big Showdown came thanks to Ronnie Greenberg, who was a producer for a lot of shows in the 50s and 60s, eventually struck out on his own, created a show called the Who, What, or Where game, which was notable for being a trivia show with no buzzers. Nobody was buzzing in. And the drama came from the players being able to wager their money on questions with different odds. But that would be a precursor to a lot of the other work that he did. Ron Greenberg produced shows are known for having strong game elements. And the idea of having to get your score right on target and using that as a mechanic by which you can block players from answering made for an incredibly exciting game and an incredibly complex game, maybe almost too complex for daytime TV on ABC in the mid-70s, but just such a fantastic show. We get Jim Peck in his first hosting role. This was his first of 3 shows that he hosted under contract to ABC. He did The Big Showdown, Hot Seat, and Second Chance, which eventually became Press Your Luck in the 80s. But that's another story. Jim Peck, as good as he would ever be, he is a very talented host, and he shows promise in this, his first hosting gig. And for the homebrew board game tinker like myself, all you need is a deck of Trivial Pursuit cards, some sort of buzz-in system, and a bunch of dice, and you have yourself the home version of the Big Showdown. Play it at your next game night. You will not be disappointed. Thank me later. The Big Showdown. Awesome.
So yeah, I could not agree with Christian more. It is such a phenomenal game. The gameplay here is so cool. And it almost caught me off guard because when I first started watching it, so for all of these, by the way, I watched the show before I did any research, before I listened to what Christian had to say. I wanted to just watch each show just as sort of a viewer, not as a analyst of
researcher.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when I first started, it's a speed trivia thing, and some of them are even multiple choice speed trivia, so you could literally just buzz in and shout out one of the answers and you could get it right. I normally don't like that kind of stuff because to me that's not the skill of trivia. Like I say, I like gameplay, and if the gameplay is just shout something out and randomly hope you're right, that's not much gameplay.
Right.
But this had a really cool strategy to it where you had to get the number exactly, and so you could lock people out. And it wasn't like, the more I watched, the more I realized that the people who are playing are only buzzing in because they know the right thing, or they know the right thing, but they shout out the wrong answer. Like, I can't even remember the question, but it was in mythology, and the question was something along the lines of, this mythological figure was known for falling in love with a statue that he carved. And the guy buzzed in before the end of the question and shouted out an answer, and it was the name of the statue, not the name of the artist. And it was like, okay, well, that's not shouting out an answer and hoping you're right. That's knowing what you're going for and trying to figure out what the question's going to be before anyone else does, which is super strategical. If you can, basically he had a 50-50 chance and he knew both answers. He just answered the wrong question, which I think is, I don't know, that doesn't bother me as much as just when there's of these three and they read out all three, then you just buzz in and shout one of them out. You know what I'm saying? Jim Peck is a great host. He does such a good job on this show. It's a little complex in the rules, not like terribly, but there's just a lot of ins and outs, and he does a really good job of explaining it all very clearly and concisely. So there's not a lot of time spent on it, right? They're not like wasting time explaining the game. He just kind of gets through it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's thrilling to watch. I could not get enough of it. I just kept watching episode after episode after episode. Awesome show. I really, really wish they made a new version of it. I will say the bonus round is not strong on the gameplay because it's literally just roll dice until you get 2 6s. And you roll a target number, right? So whatever you roll on the target number, you then, every time you roll the dice, if you get that number, you get like $500 and like a couple extra seconds on the timer. But other than that, it's just roll until you get double 6s. And obviously there's not much strategy there. If you roll a 7 on your little target roll at the start, then that's great because 7's the most common number to roll. But other than that, it's just roll the dice a bunch of time and hope a random thing happens. And not a lot there, but to that end, it also means that it happens quite often. So there's a lot of winners, and I feel like after the sort of heated pace of the game up to that point, it's probably very satisfying to just hit double 6s and be like, oh my God, it's over, and I just won a crap load of money. They give you $5,000 if you get double 6s. They give you, I think it's $10,000 if you get double 6s on the target roll at the beginning even. So a fair amount of money being given away. A lot of fun. I love the Big Showdown.
Sounds great, man. Sounds great. I'm definitely going to have to go and watch a couple episodes of that guy.
And finally, third on the list, the big surprise. I saved this one for last for a couple of reasons. I'm going to let Christian talk about it, and then I want to dive in. This one, wow.
One of my favorite game show facts, Mike Wallace, who was famous for his time on 60 Minutes, his time as a journalist, Mike Wallace had hosted more individual game shows, game shows by title, more titles than Bob Barker and Pat Sajak put together. He was a very talented host, and as a result, he got a lot of work in the 50s and early 60s hosting different game shows. A lot of people don't know that he also hosted the original pilot for To Tell the Truth, which was called Nothing But the Truth. Mike Wallace was going to be the host of To Tell the Truth, and that just shows what confidence the TV industry had in his hosting skills. There's a misconception that if you're a journalist, you should not venture into entertainment-based television. You should stick to journalism. A lot of people did really well doing both. You had John Charles Daly, who was the host of What's My Line, and also served as the head of the news department at CBS. So he had a very influential role in the news department at CBS. You had Mike Wallace, who hosted a lot of game shows and still went on to have an incredible career as a respected journalist. Even Walter Cronkite hosted a game show called It's News to Me, and it's clear how much fun he had on that show. So the idea of a journalist not being able to be a game show host is maybe less true now because we have a lot of TV journalists who do all kinds of extracurricular work on different comedy shows, game shows, talk shows. But Mike Wallace, definitely one of the strongest examples of somebody who can do both. And he was a very talented host, and The Big Surprise was only one of the shows that he hosted.
All right, so he talked a lot about Mike Wallace being the host, which I noted. Didn't think it was that significant, but I'd see his point. To me, something about this show feels so surreal. Like, I understand the disconnect from, the life of the 30s or 50s and the product of its time that we talked about with some of your shows. But there's something like almost otherworldly about this show. It's in a very different way than I've experienced a lot of stuff from that time, and this one was very different for some reason. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The first thing I want to talk about, I could not find specific evidence that said yes, 100% The Big Surprise was a show where that was cheated and was caught as part of the game show scandal and canceled because of it.
Did it exist at the same time? I mean, when did it run from?
Yeah, so it ran from October 55 to June 1956, and then again in 56 to 57. So yeah, it's right during that time when all the game show scandals are happening, and it ended when everything came crashing down. So my assumption is it has to be fake, and when you watch it, like knowing or at least having that in mind, it makes sense, but also makes it all the more surreal. I don't understand why they call it The Big Surprise. There's no surprises. The format of the show is basically just Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
So they would start off with $100 and the questions would get harder and harder and it would get up towards $1 million or whatever?
Basically, yeah. It's not that same pricing structure, but yeah, you answer more questions and you get more dollar values for the harder questions. And it seemed, so here's the other thing, only one episode of this exists, and you can find it. It's on YouTube. Please go watch it. It is a trip. But it's a little difficult to figure out exactly how the game works. And as a matter of fact, the way that it's described on Wikipedia does not seem to indicate that it all happens in one show. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The way that it's described on Wikipedia seems to indicate that these actions all happen in one show. For example, it says that if you miss a question, then another contestant could get it and get 10% of the original contestant's winnings. I think that happened from episode to episode. So again, like Millionaire, you have one contestant at a time. And I think if they get it wrong, then the next person comes in just like they would on Millionaire, but instead of starting over, they start at that question. I think something like that. There's also celebrity contestants. The one episode has Errol Flynn in it, best known for his role as the original Robin Hood. But yeah, big actor of the time. He is just spaced out on this show. Not spaced out, that's not the right wording, but like hyped up kind of stuff. Like, he just seems like he's on something. I don't know what, but he's so bizarre. And he's smoking the whole time, which again, I understand is a product of the time, but it's still, and like, as someone who used to smoke, it still felt so weird to me. They're just like, what an asshole. Like, what are you doing just smoking in the middle of a television studio? But it was not a thing back then.
I wonder if, honestly, it was all fake and it was more about the publicity of Errol Flynn than it really was about the game show.
It had to be. And so the other thing is, all the other contestants on the show, they weren't necessarily celebrities. I think some of them could be considered as such in their field, but they were people that were chosen for some sort of notable feat or act. Like, there was a kid who is apparently really, really well versed in the stock market, 11-year-old kid on the show. Someone who is very well versed in music. And so that's the other thing, is they are going in under the pretext that they are being quizzed on categories that they are familiar with, like intimately familiar with, very, very strong at. So, for example, Errol Flynn is being questioned on like nautical things, like traditional ship terms and that sort of stuff. Apparently that's his forte. He loves that kind of stuff. And these questions are just outlandishly difficult. Like, it's these long, meandering, multiple part questions, apparently put together by the Encyclopedia Britannica. And they have to get each part of the question right. And you've never even heard of a portion of the question, let alone enough to get everything right. And of course, he just like has this conversation. It's like, oh yes, it's no problem at all. I answer all these questions and know it all right, which absolutely speaks to your point of just, it's making him look good. There's some publicity thing. He had a movie to plug, so let's go put him on there and make him look like he's this super badass trivia dude. And it's so removed from reality. I don't understand how, and I guess just because there's no frame of reference, but the idea of watching this show at any point and being like, this is real, I want to watch this, as opposed to like, what is this fluff nonsense? It's so bizarrely surreal. I cannot recommend watching it enough. And I also had misgivings about saying how sort of outlandishly difficult the questions were. The first one seemed very difficult to me. But then I learned that, again, the woman that they were asking was a music expert. And it was about like the names of some members of a big band that had gone on to successful solo careers. And she knew them all right away, and what instrument they played. And she knew them all right away. And then when I found out that she was someone who was an expert in music and all that kind of stuff, I thought about it more of like, name the 4 members of Led Zeppelin and the instruments they played. Like, I could do that very easily, whereas maybe a lot of people couldn't. So maybe it was just the fact that like, oh, this is the 50s. I know nothing about whatever big band they're talking about. She's a music person. This may not be as difficult. But then you watch all the other contestants and every other question is just as like bizarrely like, who came up with this and how do you like, yeah. I mean, I guess they're giving away a lot of money, so you got to make it kind of difficult. But, man, wow. That's all I got to say.
Well, it's definitely a big surprise for me because I didn't know anything about the show. And to be honest, doesn't sound like I'm missing all that much.
No, I knew nothing about it either. And I don't think you are. If I had to guess, I would think it is all false and just fluff to make the person look good and get exposure / publicity, give them some money for answering questions that they probably either already knew the answers to or were given the answers to. Who knows? But boy, if you want to see what life in the 50s was like, go watch this episode. Like the commercials, everything about it. It feels like a parody you'd see on like Saturday Night Live or maybe even the Ren and Stimpy show. Like, it's that cartoonishly bizarre.
Wow. That's great. All right, well, we'll just throw that one up there on the website as well as any of the other videos from this week's episode. So check it out. TellThemWhatTheyWon.com.
Yes, indeed. So I think we're going to take another quick break here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about all our ratings as of this far, and do we want to change any of them?
Oh, that's a great idea.
All I can say is go watch The Big Showdown because it's a great show, and go watch The Big Surprise if you want to feel like you're having a 1950s fever dream.
Nice. Great. All right. We'll be back in just a moment. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. Welcome back once again to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. Mike, we haven't done this ever. Segment 4.
Segment 4, we're going to go back over all the shows that we've seen so far and compare our ratings again to how we feel now, to each other, to our other ratings of the other shows, all that kind of stuff. Just going to break down the numbers, see where we fall on everything.
Might as well just run right down the list then. What
yeah,
do you think?
Let's do it. I got to say off the bat, in analyzing mine, I don't have any adjustments, and I'm really pleased with how neatly they fall in order with each other.
Yeah, I don't want to change anything either, and I say that now. Now that may change over the next 20 episodes that we do next season, and I may want to then go back and say, all right, now we have a greater sample size, and it feels like I need to make some changes. But as of right now, I feel really comfortable with where we've rated stuff so far. And maybe we're a little hard on certain games, and maybe we weren't. But I mean, we're a little easy on others. But, that's our prerogative. And by the way, that's your prerogative, too. Tell us what you think of these games.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, this is all opinion. So,
yeah. And our opinion holds exactly 0 grains of salt.
For sure. For sure. Bland.
All right, let's start with Family Feud, Mike.
All right, Family Feud. I gave this one a 3.5, and you gave it a 3.75.
I think this is the only time I rated above you. Maybe once or twice.
You might be. There's a couple others, especially Match Game. Okay. But yeah, there's. It does not happen often. That's for sure.
Yeah,
and to me, I think this is a good starting point because, and I remember, I think we talk about it in the episode that it's difficult to start one of these rating systems because then you now have to compare everything to that one.
Right.
And A, we haven't been doing that, but B, I don't think we needed to. I think this sets a good precedent for how we rate the rest of the shows. So again, not changing anything.
Right. Yeah. Sounds good. Price is Right, episode number 2.
Yeah. I gave it a 4.5. You gave it a 4.25. I'm not exactly sure why. In mine, I say there's no reason why it's not perfect, but I didn't want to give a show a perfect rating yet, and I stand by that. And comparing it to what I later gave a perfect rating, I don't like it as much as that other show, so I leave mine there.
There it is.
Do you remember why you went 4.25 specifically?
I don't know. I want to. Maybe it was because I'm not as crazy about Drew Carey as I am over the original Bob Barker. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Maybe that took away a little bit from
that
it.
Sounds fair. Yeah.
I don't know. That could be. Episode number 3 was Bet Your Life.
Yeah, I gave it a 2.5. You gave it a 3.25, which feels a lot higher. And we talk about in this one that 2.5 being a middle ground is a low middle ground. But that's what I left it as, was 2.5, and I still stand by it's a low middle ground.
Yeah, 3.25 actually seems a little high for me on this one. I'm not going to make a change yet. Maybe at the end of next season I will, but definitely not my favorite game. But I love Groucho. I love what it really is about the show, and the show is good here, and that's why I think I went as high as I did on this.
For sure. Pyramid, I gave a 4, which I'm now considering my sort of bedrock score. If 4 is like a better than average, good, solid game show, right?
Sure.
So that's sort of what I'm going to now be using as my, like, how does it compare to what I would rate a 4? And with that in mind, Family Feud being a 3.5, Price is Right being a 4.5 sounds perfect to me. Pyramid being a 4 right in the middle. It's like, it's just solid, good, normal game show.
I rated a 3.75 there, and I also like it a lot. Then we did Millionaire.
Yeah, I also gave it a 4. So again, hitting that solid score. You went with a 3 though. Yeah,
and I think it's just because it's played out.
Yeah.
I mean, I was definitely over it. I didn't really care for Meredith Vieira very much as a host.
Yep. You say that in the episode. Actually, I think those exact words.
And there it is. Then we went on to your favorite.
Yeah.
Which I thought you said no perfect scores.
Well, I initially said that I didn't want to give Price is Right a perfect score that early, and I say that in the episode too, that I was not willing to go perfect that soon, and I made the right move because Double Dare, I stand by my 5. I gave it a full perfect 5. I stand by it. I stand by Price is Right being as close to perfect as you can get without actually being perfect. I like Double Dare more than I like Price is Right. If I were to make any adjustment here, I would bring Price is Right up to 4.75. As we'll see, I tend to steer clear of the quarter values. Not that like I'm against them. There's a couple more, but I think Double Dare as a 5. It's a perfect game show. I love it. It's my favorite. I am not changing that.
Yeah, 4.25 for me on that. Our then first interview piece that we did was Cash Cab. That was episode number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, I went with a 3. You squeaked out above me with a 3.25. Apparently, I in the episode I mentioned that I was originally going to give it a 2.5 because that feels middle of the road, but it seems low, which is again what we landed on in Prices. You Bet Your Life when I gave it a 2.5. So I went up to a 3. So again, with now the idea of 4 being a really good game show, I'm going to say 3 is my like average middle of the road.
Yeah, I dug Cash Cab when it was out. I thought it was really great. And I definitely think that it's a cool, unique venue for a game show, putting inside a cab. So that's hence the reason my 3.25.
Yeah, and you also mentioned something that it was funny that we talked about where I was disillusioned knowing that some of the contestants were fake, and
Right.
you were sort of illusioned knowing that some of the contestants weren't fake.
Right. And it's interesting because I think this is where you and I started to figure out what we really like in a game show.
I completely agree.
Yeah, and we started to define that as we were growing, which isn't bad. Oh, it's that's episode 8 in, and we are learning that already. So that's good. I'm giving us a 5-star review on iTunes right now.
Very nice. Which is then reflected in an excellent match game. I gave it a 2. You went with a 3.75. Again, stand by it. I'm not a fan, and you are. That's exactly where we landed on the. Oh, I get what this is. I like the game. You like the show.
And I do, and I enjoy the celebrity panel kind of shows. And again, I look at it from the celebrity side, and you really look at it from the contestant side.
It's true,
and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just a celebrity.
It's great. Well, I mean, I understand. No, but I mean, I think that's what makes our dynamic great is that we're able to look at it from 2 different points of view and get the full
correct
in the round. And we both landed on the first time that we match, and my first time giving a quarter value, remote control 2.25.
Yeah, and I think this was the first time that we were both disillusioned watching a show where we were really hoping for nostalgia, and it just didn't come through.
Exactly, did not hit the nostalgia button. Does not hold up.
Which is too bad because I think at the time, God, it was to die for. It was a great show. I wanted to be on that show so bad, dude.
Which is, I'm saying, like when I went through and reviewed it, it was like, okay, this needs to be better than Match Game because at one point I did like Remote Control, and then I was like, so all right, I'm going to go up to 2.5. And then it's like, oh no, but You Bet Your Life, like to me, is more of a quality program than Remote Control.
Right.
So I can't go as high as that. So 2.25 is all that's left.
And there it is.
Yeah.
Then we moved on to your wife's favorite show and the one that's about to come out with Leslie Jones, Supermarket Sweep.
Yeah, I gave it a 3. You gave it a 2. I also gave it the condition that if the new one is good and has production value and whatnot, that I would round mine up to a 3.5. And I stand by that. It's a perfectly cromulent show. And I would not go up to a 4 in that I don't give it that bedrock better than average, but 3.5 seems fair if they make the new one well.
I mean, if the new one's great, I could definitely come up from a 2, but I just am not a huge fan of the show. It's such a ripoff, and I say this in the episode, it's such a ripoff of Price is Right that I'm like just turned off by that. So next we had Password, which you came in real high.
Yeah, a 4. Again, that higher than average.
I'm noticing that 3.5 seems to be 3.25, 3.5 is like my run of the mill good show.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just a little bit less than you on what I would give a decent show. The sad part is like I still think back on them, even the shows we haven't done yet. I don't know where a 5 comes in for me.
Well, that's interesting.
Because theoretically, there should be at least one out there that I think is perfect.
Right? I wonder if we just haven't found it yet, or maybe there isn't one, or maybe later we'll adjust.
Maybe I'm just a tough critic. I don't know.
That's fair. Could be.
Well, anyway, you gave a wonderful 4 to that, and I gave a 3.5, and then we were on to Scrabble.
Yeah, I gave this one a 4.25, which again makes sense to me because I like it more than I like the shows that like Password, Pyramid, Millionaire are all 4s. I like this show more than that. But I don't like it as much as Double Dare.
So I like this show equally as much as Double Dare. Now, Double Dare is not a tomato soup and grilled cheese show for me as it is for you. And therefore, I definitely see why Double Dare is rated higher. But to me, this show is very, very close to perfect. It's fun, has great gameplay. The sounds, the effects were always cool. It was an easy go for me to do 4.25, which is, by the way, the highest rated that I had.
You're
Double
tied
Dare
for first.
Yeah, that Double Dare and Price is Right are all 4.25s for me. So they're my 3 favorites for the season, if you would say.
Yeah, there you go. Up next come Joker's Wild. We both went low with this. I gave it a 2.75. You went 2.5. I think we sort of agreed on that one.
Yeah, and it was weird because we both love the hosts, but it just wasn't enough to carry it through, and it is what it is. I mean, It wasn't too memorable for me, so there.
American Gladiators, a 3 and a 2.75, 3 for me, which again, it's middle of the road. It is what it is. It's as sportsy as I'm going to get. I'll tell you that.
But at least you watched it. I give you credit for that, for not being a sports guy, because it really is a sports-themed kind of show.
Yeah, it was enough wrestling to get me in there.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. All right, then we moved on to one of my bigger favorites, Hollywood Squares. Now, you would think I would have this at a 4 because I was such a big fan of it, but actually going down the rabbit hole here made me back off to a 3.75.
Yeah, and I went with a 2, and what I love is that both this and Match Game are the show that we talked about, and the fact that there's a show of them together where we define our roles and like what I don't like about game shows, and our scores match exactly on those 2 shows. We got both went 2 and 3.75. That was not planned. It just happened, and I love it.
It just happened. Yeah, I mean that means that we are being pretty right on the money when it comes to keeping a consistent rating process.
I was really, really impressed with our ability to do that because I thought we were going to be kind of all over the place and like, ooh, that's not going to match up. But I'm very pleased with it.
Episode number 17 was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, a favorite of both of ours.
Yeah, indeed. We both tied on this one again, our second match, as it were. Both went 4.
Yeah, there's just something about the nostalgia of it and the musical accompaniment just makes this a great show. And the bits, the comedy bits.
Yeah, for sure. And reviewing what I said earlier about bumping Scrabble up to 4.25, I would bump up Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego to 4.25 probably. I would not go as high as 4.5 because that's Price is Right range, and it's not Price is Right, but I'd give it an extra quarter point there.
Well, it was definitely a good show. The Gong Show was our next to last.
Yeah. Antepenultimate is the name of that word.
Okay, great. Thanks, Captain Trivia. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. I like vocabulary. Gong Show, I went 3.5. You went 2.25, 2.25. Yeah, I agree with both of those, honestly. I remember giving it the 3.5 just because it was better than average because of the focus on contestants.
Well, the funny thing is that this was where we kind of went opposite, because you thought you were going to hate it because there wasn't a lot of gameplay, and I thought I was going to love it because it was all about the show, and we ended up swapping on that one, which was interesting, just to find out that there would be a dichotomy there.
An exception that proves the rule every time, right?
Yeah. Now, okay, so what's Gambit? Is that the penultimate?
Yes.
Okay. Gambit is our next. It was episode number 18.
Yeah. Again, we tied again at 4, and I'm standing by the 4. I think it's a very, very solid show, and it fits what I'm calling now bedrock score.
Yeah, to me, this is a good show. I mean, I'm really upset that we were both too young, or not even born, some of us, to see this thing. I mean, we missed it, and it would have been great. I hope they bring that one back. That's one of my feelings.
Yeah.
Then our 19th show, the last one before the really big show, was Win, Lose, or Draw.
Yeah, our lowest yet, tied for my lowest, your lowest by far. I went with 2, you went with 1.75.
Yeah, it's the only one that we either one of us rated underneath a 2.
Correct. I still have not broken the 2 seal yet. And I don't know if this has made it to air yet, but I still say there are no zeros, because I think the idea of a game show is inherently funny enough to at least give it like a quarter of a point. I would be surprised if I even gave it less than a 1, but 1.75 is a stinker.
Yeah, we're not going to necessarily rate all 6 of them that we did today, but I will say this, there's still no zeros in there.
I agree. I have still not found a 0. As bad as some of the ones we found are, no zeros.
That's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, that's our ratings, Mike. And I think at the end of the next season, maybe we'll do a comparison rating, and we'll rank, like maybe as one of our episodes even, we could rank like all 40 episodes that we've done, or all 60 episodes we've done.
I really want to do that. What my plan is, once we get to 40, I'm going to sort mine by the rating value, and then see if there's anything that I disagree with, and make any adjustments. That's a great idea.
There. Maybe for our 50th episode, we'll rank our top 50 game shows.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Cool. That'll be halfway through season number 3.
Indeed.
And that means we're going to keep cranking them out, dude.
I'm saying, I want people to know that the end of the season does not mean the end of the show. We got big plans. There's a lot of stuff coming up, so stick around.
And for those of you who would like, please check out the social media tomorrow. On September 15th, 2020, the guys that's all 3 game show guys, it's both Mike, me, and Christian, are going to be competing on Quarantine the Game Show, and all the details will be on social. Please tune in and see it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I think with Christian's trivia knowledge and mine and your trivia history hosting, I hope that we do very well.
Yeah. Anyway, so check that out. And Mike, any other pieces of business that we need to close up before we shut down for the season?
That's all the business I believe I have, Tom.
All right, Mike. Well, that is all the time we have for today.
Yes, indeed, all the time we have for the season. So much thanks to Tom. So much thanks to our listeners. So much thanks to Christian. So much thanks to Buzzer Blog. Everybody, I love you all. Stick around. We got great stuff coming. Thank you for listening.
It's gonna be a great season coming up. We've also got a great off season coming up. If you want to call it the silly season, that's what they call it in NASCAR. The off season is called the silly season.
We are not calling it the silly season. I do not like that term.
Well, we've actually got some serious stuff coming up in the off season.
Indeed,
so,
it's going to be very serious.
Yeah, so check that out. Get caught up on the episodes that you're missing, and tune in again next time when we bring you the latest and greatest in the world of game shows. Plus, all brand new featured shows coming up next season. Things like Wheel of Fortune, Card Sharks, Let's Make a Deal. Just some of the ones that we have on the in the future.
Indeed, and remember, you can always check us online, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, tellthemwhattheywon.com. That all will continue to exist in our silly season. Oh God, now I'm saying it.
Don't say silly season. It's not going to be silly. It's going to be very serious.
Right, our serious season. Serious season.
Please subscribe, share, like, drop a review if you like what you heard.
And if you didn't like it, don't rate us on iTunes.
Yeah, please do not rate us on iTunes. Rate somebody else 1 star.
We just want 5s, or we'll take 4s with constructive criticism.
Yeah, we're good with that. Please reach out to us before you give us a 1.
Yeah,
please.
there you go. I like that.
I appreciate it. All right, Mike, I will see you next season, buddy.
Bye, Tom.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. A JTech audio production. Copyright 2020. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com. All right, Mike, what did you learn in season 1?
Doing a podcast has proven much more fruitful than I imagined, and I don't mean financially. We have not made anything off of this.
No, we have not made anything.
Not a dime. But to paraphrase a common quote, the real podcast is the friends you make along the way.
Oh, that's very sweet. And we have Christian, all the guys that write in on a regular basis, the Bryans. We've got a bunch of folks that really give us a lot, and we really appreciate that. I have learned what I've learned is all the stuff that we have learned. Like, I'm really proud of what we've learned. We've learned that I like the show, you like the game. I like that we've learned that sometimes nostalgia isn't all what it's cracked up to be.
I agree.
A lot of times these sets are made out of cardboard and duct tape. We also we've learned that we need more home games, more parting gifts. These are just so we like the musical accompaniment. We love the comedic bits in shows. All stuff I didn't know before we started this season.
Agreed. It is very interesting to learn what we're learning.
Well, I can't wait to learn more next season.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Copyright 2020, a JTech audio production.